Boom. What's up, guys? And we're back for another episode of the Scaling Seeker podcast hosted by Otter PR. Today we have a very common and special guest, Dr. Jay Feldman. Jay.
What's up, guys? Looking forward to jamming out. Today we're bringing it back to kind of beginner territory, and
Origin
I'm excited.
story.
Back to my origins.
Your story.
Naming your company. Such a fun topic, and I'm excited to hopefully help some people through that first big step in their journey.
Well, let's get right into it. Why is naming your company so important? Like, why does it matter?
It's arguably the most important decision that you can make because it's the one that you really can't take back. Yeah, you can, but circling back, changing your website, changing your social medias, changing everything identifying that anyone knows about you is damn near impossible and not worth doing. So it's really worth not only putting the thought into it, because it is the first thing people see when they come into your company and talk to you, but it's the impression that they leave with. And it represents you as a human, it represents your company, your brand. So people get hung up on this for a long time. So hopefully if they listen to the end of this one, I'll give my framework on how I've named every single company that I have and will continue to use as I open entities going forward.
Gotcha, okay. So obviously it's important because if you have a company and you put effort and you buy logos, you buy, you have a designer, you buy merch, and then boom, somebody has the trademark, or boom, somebody has the website, right? I know a lot of people, they'll buy the domain of a website, but is that all you need? Let's say you want to call it purple.com, and let's say purple.com is available, but purple trademark isn't. Most people aren't looking at the trademark. Where can an entrepreneur or a business owner run into trouble with that?
If they have your mind right now is doing the same thing that a lot of entrepreneurs' minds are doing as they're thinking about all the different factors and components that go into naming their business, and they're all right. And it's confusing, and you can get bogged down on it. You know, if someone's got the domain name for this one, but they're not using it. Someone has a trademark for this one, and nothing exists online.
Right.
Someone's got the social media account for this one, but I want that name, I want that handle, I want that company name. And it can be a difficult territory to navigate because there's so many factors at play, and that's where having like a business coach or somebody who's gone through them all before can really expedite things. But I like to break it down into a few simple steps, essentially when you're picking a name for your company, and that's one of them, and we're gonna get into that.
Yeah.
But step number one really is kind of identify the company, the niche that you're in. What category of business are you doing? And for us as a marketing agency, we're allowed to be a little bit more fun. You know, Otters are fun, we're Otter PR. It has personality, it's got character. Whereas if you're selling financial services, if you're a bank, if you're an investment fund, think about Wolf of Wall Street. What did they name? Remember the name of Jordan Belfort's company?
Stratton Oakmont.
Stratton Oakmont. There's a really funny scene of him going through the name of his company. Like our forefathers came here on the Mayflower. It's been around for hundreds of years. It's one that you can trust. Stratton Oakmont.
Yep.
So again, if you're in an industry where you want to establish and demand trust out of your name, you can do that with a brand name.
Yeah, and they also had a lion too.
Right.
Well, how do you come up with a logo if you're an investment bank firm?
That's another conversation. But kind of same thing. You know, your logo says a lot about your company, and it's what you're going for. The emotional response that you want from somebody who sees that logo, hears that name. All of it elicits a response. So kind of circling back here, figure out what category that you're in, and then figure out your personality and get a little playful with it. And from then on, you have to brainstorm. I like to come up with 50 to 100 names. I ask all of my creative friends, family, colleagues, what they think a good name for my company would be. I will write down as many as possible. You get the creative juices flowing, go for a run, go sit out in the grass with a notepad and just sketch. And then finally you break it down and you've got 10 choices or so. And that's when you kind of go into the research phase.
What's a good framework on picking a name, right? Like, you can come up with a million names, but like, what's a good actual strategy to pick a name? What are the criteria of a good name?
So the best criteria for a name is creativity. And I'm going to give kind of a secret towards the end here on how you can use the specific framework that I use to name your company.
Wait till the end.
Wait till the end. But if you're looking at like software companies, they do something interesting. If you're familiar with tools like Asana, Trello, Tidio, do you know what Trello means? Is that a word?
No.
It's not a word.
Is that an instrument?
They made that up, and it's something that a lot of software companies do and are very successful at doing. It doesn't mean anything. It's like, oh, they created this new tool. It's a new word. Whereas, marketing companies, established companies, don't like to do that. They like to use the framework that I use when naming my service businesses, which we'll talk about. But essentially it involves piggybacking on words that people already identify with, know, like, and trust. Implementing those words into your brand name, and now you get to borrow some of that trust, borrow some of that, I don't want to say authority, but likability from that word, from that element that you incorporate into your brand name.
Yeah, you hear that all the time where it's like, oh yeah, I've heard of that. You're like, how could you have heard of that? I just started the company last week.
Right.
You know? So that's a good framework on what people should do, or at least a good strategy, a good strategic system on how someone should pick a good name. How do you pick a name, or what's the criteria of picking a name that kind of sounds similar to get that initial response of, oh yeah, I've heard of that. Meanwhile, it's completely brand new. They haven't heard of that. They just think they've heard of that.
It's an art, right? Because
Yeah.
when you're doing that process of elimination in the beginning, you want to eliminate anything that isolates a specific group.
Right.
So for example, you might not think you're going to do business with kids now, but 10 years from now, Amazon didn't think they'd be selling anything other than books. Mm-hmm. So I would eliminate any names that isolate a specific group, like kids, women, men, specific races, ethnicities. Your name should be something that can be broad enough to apply to anybody. You should eliminate anything controversial. So if you think you're being clever with a name that's could be construed one way or another, make sure it will age well. Mm-hmm. And then you should eliminate anything that can be automatically confused with a big name brand, because they will come down, they will shut you down if it's something that overlaps and can be confused. Now, one thing that a lot of entrepreneurs don't know is they will see a company like Apple, who we're all familiar with, they make computers, and they'll say, all right, can't use Apple. I mean, it exists, look how big they are, they'll destroy me. But if you want to open an Apple dry cleaning, there is nobody that's going to stop you. So if your business is in a very different category, then you're pretty much safe to do whatever you want within that category, and regionally as well. And that's where it helps to have a coach or someone to help you through it.
That's interesting. So you could theoretically create applemarketing.com.
Sure can, as long as they don't have the rights and trademark to it, and they might. And Apple probably does.
Do you think it's kind of risky though? You're like, oh cool, let's go applemarketing.com. And then you get a cease and desist after you spend thousands of dollars on domains and logos.
Right. So let's go into the final step. Once you've got 5 names that you can really see yourself using, that you feel proud to, you're cool to tell mom and your friends, this is my company name. Now it's time to really spend the time getting serious and making sure that you can use that name, that it's actually viable. And there's a few ways to do that. The first thing that I think you should do is take the time as an entrepreneur and do your own due diligence before you pay a lawyer $1 gazillion to spend their time researching 30 different names. Spend your own time, go through websites, go through Google searches, social media, see if similar companies exist using that name. If it's similar in name and similar in category, cross it off your list. If you're married to it, fine, add it to a list, have the lawyer do it. But after that process where you conduct it yourself, at that point it's worth spending the money, hiring an IP attorney, hiring somebody to actually do the due diligence, do a trademark search, do a full Google search, and make sure that name is open for business. Mm-hmm. And you'd be surprised how many businesses, like you said, have the domain but don't have a trademark. They have a trademark but have never used it. So there's a lot of gray area that you need to navigate. It helps to have a lawyer to help you navigate it, because there's something called first use rights. So even if I don't have a trademark on Otter PR, if somebody doesn't have a trademark either, but they've been using Otter PR for something for years, they now have first use rights, and I'm gonna have to fight them for that name. You don't want to enter a fight like that, especially as someone big.
Right. So what if you have a domain and it's Otter PR, but someone owns Otter PR trademark, and then a year down the line they're like, no, actually we own the trademark. Does it transfer over to domains? Because I feel like if you have an e-commerce store, you can still use that versus just having the name of like a brick and mortar or e-commerce store as well.
So I might need to reframe the question. You have the domain, but somebody else has the trademark?
Yeah, like there's a lot of domains that are available, but I've seen those businesses before, and someone has a trademark, but they don't have the domain. I think there was actually a couple famous businesses that didn't have the domain,
right? And
some people were using the domain. It's like, just because you have the trademark doesn't mean you get the domain.
So yeah, I mean, domains you can buy without a trademark. So you can, if I bought apple.com, I need the trademark to own that domain. I'd be shit out of luck if someone else had the Apple trademark and I wanted to use that as a company.
Yeah.
Or you can sell it to that person, which is the more likely scenario. Mm-hmm. But yeah, if I want to start Apple Computers and I have apple.com, but they have the trademark for Apple Computers, I can't operate my company under that name.
Interesting. Interesting. Yeah, I think a lot of people fall short of that. You know, they think, oh, I have the domain, we're good.
Right, and the domain's a big deal.
Yeah.
And when you're doing your research, you should look for an available domain. There's not many nowadays.
If somebody wants to register a trademark, how much does it typically cost?
So you can go through an IP attorney, and like I said, there's a lot of gray area. So doing a trademark search, doing that appropriate due diligence, having a lawyer file it by hand can be $5,000. There are discount ways to do it. You can go on Rocket Lawyer, you can go on Fiverr and have somebody do a decent trademark application for you, do decent research.
Right.
But again, it's crazy how much gray area there is. You can spend the $500 application fee to apply for a trademark and get denied because your lawyer on Fiverr didn't do good enough due diligence. Yeah. So I'd say if you've got the money, you're serious about the business, hire an appropriate IP attorney to actually walk you through the process.
Gotcha. Okay. 80-20. Somebody wants the best name possible. What are the key criteria that someone would walk away with? It's like there's a lot of information. What's the top 3?
Key criteria for picking a good brand name. It's got to be something memorable. It's got to be something relatable, and it's got to be something relevant. So if I were to pick 3 main things to focus on, it's going to be those 3. It's got to be relevant to what it is that you do. So you should hear the name and be like, they do that. You should walk away and automatically remember that name. Otter PR, fucking otters. Everyone loves otters. And it should have character.
What about colors? If somebody wants to pick a color that's relatable to their business, right? Obviously,
Right.
like, you know, blue is trusting, and yellow is fun and bright.
Let's dive into the secret framework. I
Yeah.
think they've stayed long enough.
Yeah.
Here's how I recommend people choose business names. Here's the same way that I chose Otter PR. So a secret hack to finding words that are relatable, likable, that you can implement into your company are thinking about colors, animals, and fruits. And you can see this example tons of times with very successful companies that you've probably heard of. One I keep mentioning over and again, Apple, because they're just such a good example of this. It's a fruit, blackberry, raspberry Pi. If you think about animals, you can think about, well, Otter PR, obviously the best one, but then Jaguar cars, Penguin apparel. If you think about colors, purple, I don't know if you're familiar with that bedding company, BlackRock, the finance company, Blue Steel. Everyone knows Blue Steel now, made famous by Ben Stiller.
Ben Stiller, yeah.
Oh yeah. So automatically people hear these colors and people relate to colors. They like colors. I like the color purple. They relate to animals. Who doesn't like otters? Jaguar, they're not loving like otters, but Jaguar, that's kind of badass. It's a badass car.
Yeah.
Penguin, I don't really understand. It wouldn't be the first.
And books too, Penguin books.
Penguin books, Penguin apparel. It wouldn't be what I would name my company for.
I also heard Hippo before too.
Hippo's a company? There you go.
Hippo something, yeah. It's
Yeah.
Hippo. Yeah, it was an app.
And you could probably, if you sat there long enough, I promise you'd think of hundreds of examples of this.
Yeah.
And it's a really good, easy way to find a relatable word that applies to your company. All you have to do sometimes is add whatever descriptive word of your company is after that name or before that name. So Otter PR, Purple Marketing, Hippo Advertising, Hippo AI. There's all kinds of ways that you can finagle it, but it automatically adds a layer of trust to your brand.
Absolutely. Okay, cool. How do people reach out to you? They want to get a hold of you? They want to send you money? What does that look like?
If you want to send me money, my Venmo, I'm just kidding. We're otterpr.com. If you want to shoot us a message, talk about PR services, talk about marketing, you can reach us at our domain name or at otterpr on Instagram. And happy to shoot the shit, talk business, give you any business insights that you might need. And if you are doing $1 million or plus in annual revenue, contact us for PR services. There's no one better out there. Thank you,
All right.
Justin.
From Justin to Jay, Jay to Justin, this is the Scaling Secret Podcast, hosted by Otter PR, and we're out.
Good
Bye-bye,
work.
y'all.